welcome back to another episode. This is Back to You. I'm your host, Ray, and we about to get into a lot of shit. But first, let me tell you what this platform is about. So this platform is just to bring people that have a deeper knowledge about themselves together so we can talk about real shit. So you're here, I'm here. Let's get into it. First thing we're going to get into, and I got my notebook with me because it's just too much shit to be just talking about at the top of my head, and I have to be organized. So this video won't be like 5 hours. Anyways, Robert E. Byrd. So he was a famous naval officer, and he got his fame from leading an expedition across the Arctic and the Atlantic Ocean. And he was known to be able to cross the ice walls, discover other lands, and come back to tell the story. Now, how was this possible? So, it said that Robert found a portal in the Arctic that led him to these other lands. And don't worry, I'm going to talk about that deeper. That's just how they said that he was able to get to these other lands. And when you look at this Gleason's map created in 1892, and you see the ice wall surrounding the world. So he didn't physically cross the ice wall. He found a place, a portal that took him and led him to these other lands. I'm gonna get into it. I know your mind is probably like, what the hell? But don't worry, we're gonna get into it. So when you're reading this book, and this book is The Missing Diary of Admiral Robert E. Byrd, he explains in one of his diary entries that he came across a crystal-like city when he was approaching these unknown lands. Now, just keep that in mind because that's important. And we're going to hit back on the Tree of Life, just in case people don't know what the Tree of Life is or if they never heard of it. But we're going to hit on the Tree of Life. We're going to explain what it is and its significance. So, the Tree of Life is basically a sacred source of energy, and it represents us on a macro level. So what does that mean? Basically, you don't even have to be like a fucking scientist to observe this. But when you look at a tree and you look at the human body, there's so many similarities. Like literally shit looks the same, just different, but the same. So that's literally what it means. The Tree of Life represents us on a macro level, and we represent the Tree of Life on a micro level. So continuing on, the Tree of Life has a sacred geometric symbol, and this is the sacred geometric symbol of the Tree of Life. Now, this might be a lot for some of you, so I'm going to make it a little simpler. This is the Tree of Life symbol. Now, when you look at this symbol, it reminds me, I don't know about you, but it reminds me a lot of a crystal. Boom. Pay attention to these colors as well. But anyways, this is the sacred geometric symbol of the Tree of Life, and this is the same shape of the symbol. So when you go back to the diary entry of him saying that he's seen a crystal-like city when he approached these other lands, really makes you think like, I wonder why he said that. Well, I just told you why he said that. Moving on. The Mercator map. The Mercator map was created in 1569, and that shows a world without an ice wall. That's important, but we're gonna hit on that later. So why I wanted to talk about the Mercator map, because in the middle you have this area called Pulvis Arctis, which translates into Arctic poles. And it's this figure in the middle called Rupes Nigra et Altissima. That translates into black rock. Now that's important because if you guys did not know, eons ago the tree of life was cut down. And the tree of life is not just some regular tree you see in your backyard. It's a gigantic tree of like a mountainous size. So when you look at these different pictures of mountains around the world, not to say every mountain, but just different mountains around the world, and you see it has like this flat top, when you do your research, you will come to understand that these mountains have an underground root system. Now, I don't know about you, but I know rocks don't have roots. So how can it be a mountain if it has roots underground? I'm gonna tell you why. Because it's not a mountain. It's a tree. A big ass gigantic tree. So that's important because of the map. And the map saying Black Rock. So why is this the translation? Why is this depicted? This is where the tree of life lived. And because of it being cut down, and now you can only see this stump, this mountainous stump. Just because it got cut down does not mean that it's just like dead, like powerless. It's basically like an energy vortex. So when you're talking about a vortex, you're talking about a whole of something that transports energy in it and transports energy out of it. What does that sound like to you? Well, to me, it sounds like a black hole. Black rock, black hole. Black hole, definitely, I feel like where they got the name for the black holes in space. Energy vortex transporting things in and out. Now, when you think about that, doesn't that sound a lot like a portal? And doesn't that sound a lot like what Admiral Richard E. Byrd could use to transport himself to these other lands that we don't have access to? Also, back to the Gleason's map that I showed y'all earlier. It's a fucking black hole in the middle of the map. So, if there's that, I don't know how you can explain that, but yeah. Moving on. A Greek map. I'm going to show y'all a lot of maps because this stuff is out there. This information is out there. It's your job to do your due diligence and do your research to figure out this stuff. But I happen to come across this information and I want to share with you. So we're going to talk about these different maps amongst other things. So talking about this Greek map from 1624. The Arctic poles are showed as Hyperboreae. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but yeah, Hyperboreae. So what does that mean and why is that significant? Well, in Greek mythology, Hyperboreae were a people that lived in the northern paradise of perpetual sunshine. This is important. Hyperboreae is important. Keep that in your mind for later. There's also this map of the world created in the 1570s that depict the Arctic poles as Terra Septentrionalis Incognita. What does that translate to? Unknown northern lands. So we have these different maps from these different time periods, but all in all, they're depicting the same message. You have the Greek map, Hyperboreae, which is saying that there were people living there that lived in a northern paradise of perpetual sunshine. You have the 1570s map showing the Arctic as Terra Septentrionalis Incognita. Now, this was created before the Greek map, and this says unknown northern lands. So you have the Mercator map created in 1569. You have the Greek map created in 1624, and you have another map of the world created in the 1570s, all depicting a very similar characteristic. All of these maps depict the world without an ice wall. Now, that is very important, and I want you to remember that. But we're going to go back to the Greek map and the word Hyperboreae. So, why did I want y'all to remember Hyperboreae? Well, it's because when you look at, remember, Hyperboreae is the same place where the Arctic poles is. So, aurora lights or the northern lights, the scientific name for those are aurora borealis. I promise y'all, I cannot make this shit up. But we have those two words, and when you take the root word bore, what does that mean? Well, I'm gonna tell you what it means. It means to drill or to make a hole in something. Now, that is significant because when you look at the Mercator map and you look at the figure in the middle, we already said it translates to black rock. But Hyperboreae and Aurora Borealis to make a hole because the tree was cut down and left this black hole energy vortex, sucking energy in it and spitting energy out of it, transporting people to other realms, a portal, whatever you want to call it. These are significant things to think about because why would it have the same root word bore to make a hole? They're in the same place that talks about the tree of life, and the tree of life was cut down, left an energy vortex, which they called a black hole because it sucked energy in it and spit energy out. I promise y'all, it's a lot. It's a lot, and I can go even deeper, but I want to stay on topic, so let's keep going. So, remember when I told y'all to pay attention to the color of the crystal that was similar to the sacred geometric symbol of the tree of life? Y'all, it's the same colors as the northern lights. If that's a coincidence, that's a big ass coincidence. And I also think it's funny that Elon Musk has a company called the Boring Company, drilling into the earth. Basically, he's saying it's because he wants to create transportation system underground to alleviate the traffic. But in reality, I think that he is drilling because he wants to find another portal. He wants to find another portal that will take him to these other realms. Now, he could have named that company anything in the world, but he named it the Boring Company. Play on words, because it's the Boring Company because he doesn't want you to look at it. He wants you to pay attention to SpaceX, and also because of the word bore and how it is the same root word of Hyperborealis and Aurora Borealis. Why is the aurora lights important? So, the aurora lights is important because it's said to be the remaining energy remnants of the tree of life. And this got me thinking because I remember seeing an article talking about people in Florida being able to see the northern lights at one point in time. So it's like, okay, you ain't gotta be smart to really understand this part right here. I'm in Florida, the northern lights in the Arctic poles. How the hell am I going to be able to see that, right? I'm going to tell you why. It's because us as a collective, we are awakening. I always tell people this is a great time to be alive because stuff that's happening has never happened before for the good. The aurora lights are growing and expanding because us as a collective, our knowledge is growing and expanding, and we are learning the real. We are getting to the bottom of the real story. They tried to trick us, manipulate us, but a lot of us are breaking out of it, and we are seeing the truth behind the shit that they put out. We're learning the real story and not his story, okay? I need to put that on a shirt. Anyway, now we're going to hit on something that I'm pretty sure you guys have a question about. So, The biggest difference between the Gleason's map, the map we use today, and the Mercator map, the Greek map, and the map in the 1570s is the fact that there is no ice wall depicted on all three of them. Plus even more maps, but we're just going to talk about those three. So where did the ice wall come from? Before I go into that, I just want to explain, just in case some people don't know, that the Arctic wasn't always cold. And this has been scientifically proven. It's an article saying that around 55 million years ago, the Arctic was once a lot like Miami, with an average temperature of 74 degrees, alligator ancestors, and palm trees, science says. So, as hot as Miami 55 million years ago, and now we've come to having a big ass ice wall around the entire earth. That's a big jump. Even though it was a long time period, I'm gonna tell you why the ice wall was put there, because yes, indeed, it was put there. One of the reasons why the ice wall was put there, so people could keep out and they wouldn't be able to find these portals and travel to these different realms. Because just imagine that, right? Imagine they trying to tell us all the things about history that they've been trying to tell us. If we were able to travel and go find a portal that takes us to another land, I'm pretty sure their story that they've been telling us would not add up. So they had to figure out a way to keep the people out and keep the people not knowing about this. So how did they do that? How did they create this ice wall? How did they change the temperature from being this warm climate paradise to this uninhabitable ice environment, habitat, whatever? Well, it's been scientifically proven, and I don't even care if stuff has been scientifically proven, but I just say this because I know it's like some people that's like just skeptical about stuff, so I just say that to make them feel better. But anyways, it's been scientifically proven that a fern called azolla was the reason for this drastic change in climate. Now, this is not something that happened like overnight. As stated in the article before, the Arctic was hot 55 million years ago. So it took time, but the Aurora fern is an invasive species, and I'm not going to get into how scientifically it was able to create this cold habitat and spread it. You can do that on your own, but we're going to talk about something that I thought was very interesting. So when you look at this fern, right, this is what the fern looks like, and when you do a Google Translate from Latin to English, the English translation says from the pot. What does that mean? I'm gonna tell you what it means, of course. Look at this picture. This is a picture of a Sumerian god, and he has what is that? Oh, it's a pot, and he has these seeds in his hand. And what, look at the picture. Doesn't it look a lot like the ferns that they are talking about was the creation of the cold climate in the Arctic? Very, very, very interesting. Now, the reason why I put God in parentheses is because this is not a God. You know how the Bible talks about the fallen angels? The fallen angels are really the Anunnaki. And if you don't know about the Anunnaki, this is something that I'm just going to have to get into in another video. But basically, the Anunnaki came and took over our world, representing themselves as gods, but they were not really gods. They just were these advanced beings, so it was easy for them to portray themselves as gods. But we're going to get into that on another video. That's basically what I wanted to talk about today. I still didn't talk about everything I wanted to, but the main parts of this video that I wanted to hit on, I wanted to give a background about Robert E. Byrd. I wanted to give a background on the Tree of Life and the different maps of the world. And also, it's hella different movies that depict this same story as well. My favorite, probably the most common that you probably already thought about, was Avatar. Avatar literally gives it to you verbatim, honestly. They have these men coming to chop down the tree of life because they want to extract some type of vibranium or something, whatever. But, you know, they put all of the facts in movies so you can always have that question like, this was a movie, so like, could it really be real? Yes indeed, because in fact the creator of NASA, Wernher von Braun, and Walt Disney were basically besties. So that's interesting to me because Wernher von Braun, the creator of NASA, you know, NASA, scientific. And then you have Walt Disney, the man that makes the movies, the shows, amusement parks. Those people are besties. And in my next video, we're going to get into how they really play in our faces with the shit that happens and the shit that they put in these movies. Because according to karmic law, they have to tell us in some way. Like, we can't just go about and not know anything, but they don't have to tell us verbatim.